This video is sponsored by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Oh no! Have I stumbled across yet another bizarre social media conflict which requires an overly excitable, eccentric and autistic academic to dig obsessively deeply into the madness of it all? I do believe I have. So, I popped on social media the other day to upload a video, and I was recommended a video of this lovely lady in distress. See, many of the people I follow followed her, which is seemingly why she was thrust upon me, and her dilemma was as such. So, a rather unsettling and derogatory British academic had been making videos about her for over a year, with the main accusation being she was a neo-Nazi. Now, the examples she gives of his evidence for the accusation are superficial and circumstantial, to say the least, such as her having a quote under the ancient sun in her bio, that she has partnered with Pagan.org, whose logo features a black orb above a tree, which the academic argued was a black sun, and that she is pale-skinned and blonde, and ultimately a grifter and a neo-Nazi. Now, her defence to these rather weak arguments was that Under an Ancient Sun was the song title of her favourite instrumental from the Elder Scrolls game, and she showcases that she plays that song across some of her videos as background music. She also states that she is not part of Pagan.org and has no affiliation with it other than an influencer relationship, and thus wouldn't have any control over the logos they design. But she contends that the presence of stars above the tree and around the black orb suggests it is a black moon, not a sun. Yet, despite this limited evidence, the academic has gone on to ruin her professional career, emailing a venue of a retreat she was hosting with the solid declaration that she was a neo-Nazi. Naturally, the venue cancelled her retreat, resulting in her losing her income, an incredibly stressful thing to happen to anyone, but especially for a heavily pregnant young woman. From what was presented in the video, it seemed utterly asinine for an established academic at a university to throw around such major claims about a young woman on the internet, going so far as to contact her business partners and even look up her husband and his family on LinkedIn and make multiple videos about her. And coupled with his deeply derogatory and misogynistic comments about her body and appearance, also referring to her as neo-Nazi Barbie, he came off as an obsessive and rather immature twit. Now, she inserted a clip of him saying, quote, "We're the archaeologists, you're the grunt and the grifter who is spinning a claim of authority because you stride around in the snow looking really skinny and pale," end quote. Now, firstly, I don't know how striding around in the snow asserts authority in any way, but secondly, the comment asserting his academic authority, coupled with him remarking rather derogatorily about her body, comes across as a little more than the unfortunately very common misogynistic academic gatekeeping. Now, naturally, I refuse to just use selected clips as evidence for one's claims. Perhaps the academic was shallow in his reasoning, but to leap to the claim of neo-Nazi based on little more than a quote in a bio and a perceived black sun as a logo for a company that she has worked with but not worked for, and her Aryan appearance, seems incredibly unacademic in reasoning, emotionally charged, and laughably circumstantial. Surely he would have had to have some more worthwhile and substantial arguments than just the clips that were shown. So I tried to look him up and watch his videos about her for myself, but he's removed all the videos discussing her, likely in response to not only her legal threat, but undoubtedly the huge swathe of outraged people contacting his university on her behalf. Now, thankfully, she posted a longer video online where I saw more accusations. Now, here I saw that another point he made was that on TikTok, her only mutual follow was Evelina Hana, the wife of William Hana, who is one of the founders of Alternatives for Sweden, Sweden's far-right political party, and she also followed Alternative for Sweden's TikTok account. The influencer's partner also follows Gustav Kasselstrand, who is also the other founder of Alternative for Sweden, and Evelina Hana. Now, the influencer's response to that was that she was friends in real life with Evelina, and she has been for a long time, and she's allowed to have friends of all political alliances because there's more to someone than their politics. Now, as for why she was following Alternative for Sweden's TikTok account, it was because she just follows accounts based on the posts that she likes. She doesn't look into the background of the people she follows or sees their politics. She has since unfollowed everyone on TikTok. But before we go into all the nitty-gritty, I'd like to take a moment to thank today's sponsor, which is Squarespace. So whether you're just starting out or managing a growing brand, Squarespace makes it so easy for you to create a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything from products to content to time, all in one place and all on your terms. I have gone through so many iterations of my businesses online, from blogging to now running a whole business, and Squarespace has seen all sides of my online evolution. I know a lot of people have talked to me about setting up my own PhD research kind of community with all of you guys, and I could do that on my Squarespace website because it would allow me to create members only content for a community, and I could sell access to online courses or blogs or videos and memberships, and purchases can be anything from a one-time fee to subscription access. And then when it comes to evolving that business, I can make smarter business decisions with Squarespace's intuitive built-in analytics tools, which lets me review my website traffic or learn where to focus my engagement and track revenue from bookings and invoices and product sales. Again, all in one place. So if you're interested, check out squarespace.com for a free trial. And then when you're ready to launch it, go to squarespace.com/lady of the library to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Now, as someone in, the real world, I know it's a utopia, but I don't think I could classify myself as friends with anyone who ascribes themselves with a far-right ideology, particularly a person who tweets about immigrants needing to leave Sweden, quote, make Europe great again, quote, I'm proud to be blonde and I'm proud to be white, complaining how she is a minority in Sweden with trains full of immigrants and women in hijabs and she can't understand a word anyone's saying. She also talks about how she and her husband are the same people and want their people to continue to exist, as Sweden doesn't need enrichment from the third world. She also retweets Tommy Robinson, the famed British far-right person. You get my gist. The most amusing tweet of hers that I found was that she claimed that nightclubs have stopped playing rap and R&B music in Sweden because it brings immigrants into the nightclubs and no one wants to go there anymore. Now, socially speaking, I would find it hard to be friends with someone who held those beliefs unless I wasn't repulsed by them and didn't find them ignorant. And the only way I could conceive being in that position would be if I too aligned with those beliefs, at least enough not to find them disgustingly racist. And whilst looking through Evelina's Twitter, I also saw quite a recent photograph of her with said influencer in question on her feed. So, okay, now things are starting to look a little bit more alt-right leaning, but still, technically, it's all circumstantial. See, as an academic, you cannot come to an extreme conclusion about someone's political stance based on circumstantial evidence. Because, for example, a lot of left-leaning people follow Trump online because they report on his social media posts or study alt-right politics, or just find it horrifying to watch, like a car crash. But for many people, keeping up to date with everything Trump posts online is like capturing history, which could make for an excellent research paper, especially if there's a chance something incredibly juicy is posted that could be quickly deleted and lost to the internet ether if one were not quick on the pulse. Being friends with someone who fits the description of someone being openly racist and white supremacist is another matter, but it's still too indirect, technically, to be used as evidence for an argument, for a solid argument. We can't condemn people for who they follow, or technically who they are related to, or technically even friends with, because sometimes people don't know other sides of people's personalities or beliefs. I'm sure we don't know all the horrible stuff that all our friends have potentially done in their secret time. And whilst we would like to believe that it would be ridiculous not to know political stances, it's not intellectually honest to assert that one knows what's going on in another person's head. We need harder evidence than that. Now, what did get my attention was her talking about his response to her reel about proto-writing system found in Germany. So she says that his criticism of her is that she got all the information incorrect, so therefore he concludes that she is a neo-Nazi. Now, she concedes in the video that she speaks in an exaggerated manner to make the finding more exciting, but she asserts that she got all her information elsewhere, and thus any inaccuracies that she made are other people's faults, because she read their articles and they are the ones who made the mistakes. Okay, so a little accountability is needed here. Spreading misinformation because wanting to do their due diligence isn't an opportunity to blame source material. But she's not an academic, and perhaps she hasn't had that sort of training, and just got excited about something that sounded cool, and she made errors. She's in her early 20s. It's not that uncommon for that age, particularly if you're trying to build up a social media career, as it were. And it's certainly not evidence of being a neo-Nazi. But what was the reel in question? Well, it looks like I have to download TikTok for the first time in over a year to find out. So I did. So, the text under the reel is significant because the academic critiquing her had an issue with it. And it reads as such, quote, "This is a huge win for us European ancient history fans. It seems like what we previously believed to be the oldest evidence of written language from 5,000 years ago in Mesopotamia was actually incorrect. Very recent findings seem to prove that the oldest written language is actually 40,000 years old from Germany, specifically the caves of Swabian Jura." Now, the academic leans into this, saying that she is specifically celebrating the fatherland, Germany, being the source of the discovery, which I think, again, is sort of poor academic practice. Having watched the video and reading the description, placing emphasis where there isn't any is bad form, as it reveals that you're going in with an agenda to your reading. You already want the evidence to support your pre-formulated answer, and that's not what research is about. I mean, I will concede that it's rather strange to say it's a huge win for us European history fans. It comes across as weirdly competitive, which is strange. I suppose European history is no different from American history as a term, although it's a rather awkward one to employ, and I haven't really ever heard people use that term before, as it's incredibly broad, but hey-ho. The real problem here is that she's not understood the findings and then made massive claims about what they mean, which isn't backed up by any of the very research that she's alluding to. So what is she actually talking about? I mean, her video was likely inspired by headlines that went around at the end of February 2026 this year, such as this BBC one of the news article reading, quote, "First writing may be 40,000 years earlier than thought." I mean, keynote here is maybe. And I want to stick with this BBC article, as there's a chance this may have also resulted in some of the other criticisms she's faced. So on February 23rd, 2026, a research paper titled "Humans 40,000 Years Ago Developed a System of Conventional Signs." And this paper inspired lots of exciting click-worthy articles by journalists. Now, the paper regards the analysis of 40,000-year-old assemblage of mobile artefacts bearing sequences of intentionally engraved geometric signs like scratches and crosses and dots. Now, the academic criticising the influencer accused her of being a neo-Nazi because she mentions only Germany, i.e., in his words, the fatherland, despite these mobile artefacts coming from the Dordogne region of southwestern France, in the cave systems of Swabian Jura in southwestern Germany, and there's a cluster of them in Belgium. Now, he ascribes white supremacist ideology for her emphasis on Germany being the source of these artefacts, when in reality, there's a chance that she may have only just read the BBC article, which only mentions Germany. And that's because the paper that inspired the article was based on an assessment of 260 mobile artefacts from Germany, the Swabian Auric nation. Again, it's intellectually dishonest to ascribe malice when another answer for that solution could just be poor research done. There's a chance that a BBC article or a blog that was inspired by it and so forth was the primary source that the influencer used rather than the paper itself. Or she read, blogs, social media posts and things like that regurgitated in the same way that Germany was the only place mentioned because those were the artefacts that were studied, and therefore that claim was perpetuated, even though the paper itself does talk about these artefacts existing across multiple regions. That being said, these artefacts do not, in any way, as she claims, seem to prove the oldest written language was actually 40,000 years ago from Germany. The scratch markings are incredibly interesting, but even according to the paper itself, there is no proof that these markings represent a written language. The study suggests that early humans had organised symbols much earlier than we thought they did, but that is not the same thing as proving that they had a writing system that existed 40,000 years ago. I mean, even the extract of the paper says that, quote, "These results cannot be taken to strictly prove that the Auric nation sign sequences encoded numero-ideographic information, as in the case with proto-cuneiform. However, they prove that the first hunter-gatherers arriving in Europe already applied sign sequences of comparable complexity in a deliberate, systemic and conventional manner." several 10,000 years before the advent of genuine writing. So, all that being said, what the influencer, the content creator, took away from this was, quote, recent findings seem to prove that the oldest written language was actually 40,000 years ago from Germany. What the academic criticising her took away from her post was that she was a neo-Nazi propping up the fatherland Germany as a superior source of culture and knowledge. And what I take away from it is that a young person finding the opportunity to make content on a trending topic in her field, but not actually reading about it deeper than the articles regurgitating journalistic interpretations of that information, and an academic who is already sceptical of said creator due to her alt-right associations sees that as a neo-Nazi talking point. Critical thinking, people, critical thinking. But does that mean I'm letting this creator off the hook? Oh no, because we need to talk about the ancestral roots talk. I went back on her TikTok and I found the first video of her responding to this academic when he first ever criticised her. Now, in this video, at the end of the video, she disavows her affiliation with the far-right political party Alternative for Sweden, but she ends the video with, and I quote, this: "The agenda behind my videos is to help us reconnect with our roots and our culture in a world that is increasingly turning to globalism and atomization. This, I believe, is very unhealthy, to be so disconnected from where you come from and the people that you share cultural and genetic heritage with." Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Anyone who casually discusses cultural purity, uses the terms genetic heritage, and states that they're against globalism, suggests the person is a staunch right-wing nationalist at best and an anti-Semite at worst, by employing a dog whistle masquerading as insightful geoeconomic analysis. But the number of anti-Semitic comments in her video there suggests that she attracted an audience that agrees with the latter interpretation of what globalism means. Now, the casual promotion of going back to one's Germanic roots is not exclusive to the comment at the end of this video. It's actually rather heavily implied in another video of hers, one on ruins. Although if one were to watch that rune video without any further context, it would be pretty easy to perceive it as entirely innocent, really. So this is a video that she makes that the academic first responded to, and it's a video saying that we need to reclaim runes instead of writing in English. Now, this isn't me criticising this type of content at all. In fact, there is an incredibly brilliant video on this very, very topic by the fantastic Rob Worlds. I'll leave him down below. I'll show a little picture of it here. His is a really fantastic and entertaining discussion on the importance of runes, how it works in our language, and it's a very balanced critique of how it's been misappropriated. Her video is not like that, although I think it tried to be. So she argues in her video that we should be writing in runes and, quote, reclaiming our heritage, instead of using the alphabet that we have today, which was designed for Latin. Now, runes, she says, were, quote, made for us, designed by our ancestors. Throughout the video, we've got a lot of returning to our ancestral heritage talk here, which may be, ringing some alarm bells, given the context of her friend that we talked about earlier. Now, runes are used across all contexts because they're incredibly cool and really awesome, but we can't ignore the appropriation of the runic alphabet by white supremacists, in large part because of the Nazi Germany, which often used runes for its symbology. White supremacists use runes for transliterated Roman letters, creating an alternative alphabet, sometimes viewed as a code, since the vast majority of people do not know what the runic letters stand for. It's also pretty common for white supremacists to use runic letters to portray certain words of significance to other white supremacists and the white supremacist cause in general, which is seen like on clothing or tattoos. Among the most common words or phrases are white power, hate, and Rauoa, which is an acronym for racial holy war. There was just an article in September of last year on The Guardian discussing how the Australian alt-right have co-opted ancient Norse mythology to create a grab bag of symbols that allow them to continue to signal their white supremacy after the creation of state and federal laws banning Nazi and hate symbols in Australia, predominantly the German swastika, the Nazi salute, and the double sig rune. Additionally, when the Unite the Right rally took place in Charlottesville in 2017, the protesters carried banners featuring the Norse god Thor's hammer, and the perpetrator of the New Zealand's Christchurch massacre of 2019 wrote, quote, "See you in Valhalla," referencing the Great Hall where heroes of Norse mythology go to when they die, and that was at the end of his manifesto. National Socialism and Hitler idolised the Norse people, i.e. those who lived in Nordic areas. I mean, obviously, even the swastika is based on part of a symbol of Viking artefacts. Obviously, I don't need to say the obvious, there are more neo-pagans who are not Nazis. They are incredibly inclusive, and they don't see Nordic mythology as a sort of ethnic religion that you can only participate in if you are of German descent. And also, let's call it as it is, the Vikings do not deserve to be co-opted by pea-brained, hate-filled numbskulls who can't read basic text. And I'm not saying that the influencer is interested or partakes in the white supremacist misappropriation of runes, but the call to one's ancestral origins, to one's genetic heritage, that kind of terminology is frequently associated with nationalism of the genetic kind, to put it politely. Additionally, what's just a bit weird about it is, she talks about how runes were, quote, made for us, perfectly designed for the language of our ancestors, saying it's more efficient and intuitive than Latin, when Latin's older than the runes. The earliest, most reliable runic inscriptions date back to approximately 150 to 200 CE. They're not that old, but the Latin alphabet was developed from the Etruscan alphabet around the 7th to 6th century BCE, so 700 years before runes were developed. Scholars today generally agree that the runic script was not an independent invention from scratch, but rather an adaptation of existing alphabets, modified to suit the early Germanic language phonology and their preferred carving medium. So if it's more natural and intuitive, it's just because apparently this influences carving more than they are writing or typing, which, understandably, runes are much easier than Latin to carve into stone, I will give her that. Now, which alphabet inspired the runes is actually still up for debate. You have the Latin theory, the Danish theory, the Phoenician theory, but obviously that's part of the Latin theory. We have the Old Italic, the North Etruscan theory, the Greek theory. They all have positions as to which one really inspired the runic alphabet. But that being said, if runes are as early as you think our heritage goes, what happened? What's wrong with your ancestors before the 2nd century? Do they not count? Where are we going back to our roots? Before they had an alphabet? Or that doesn't count. Just when they had a written language system. Ironically, the runes would never have been made for us had they not been influenced and inspired by other languages. There's nothing pure or natural about its construction. Runes are the result of a majestic ethnographic melting pot of ideas, and there's nothing purely Germanic about it. So the only way you're going to reclaim your heritage is unless you accept that your heritage is a byproduct of other heritages, which isn't a genetically pure approach to one's culture, is it? Now, I say this as someone who could only ever dream of holding an academic position at university. But from what I took away from all of this is that the world's gone bloody mad and the internet is truly melting people's brains and minds because, my God, honestly, to have been dutiful enough to an influencer's content, to have picked up on the subtleties of verbiage, along with tracing through their followers as a grown academic man, suggests that one really did not have enough to do in their day. And all of that for an influencer he didn't even like. Honestly, I resent this academic, personally, purely for the pain that they put me through as I sifted through what was honestly mind-numbingly boring content. See, I really thought that digging through this topic to see where his argument was coming from would thrust me into this bountiful field, rich with complex crops for me to analyse and dissect. But no, behold the field in which I grow my fucks. Lay thy eyes upon it and thou shalt see that it is barren. There wasn't anything fun to debunk. All the videos were insanely boring to watch, and I had to keep replaying them over and over to make sure that I hadn't missed anything. At that point, I started to feel like this was all a plot between her and him to punish me, because I take it very personally. Really, the real message is this. There have always been and will always be people of different political affiliations to oneself existing online, possibly with large followers. There are thousands of pagans out there who are utterly majestic, wonderful human beings. They're welcoming, they're really wholesome, loving people. And then there are pagans who will abuse and co-opt Nordic imagery and mythos for the sake of their hateful and racist ideologies. That's the same with absolutely every single damn religion in the world. Every ideology there can possibly be. And I can say for certain that there are a lot more dangerous and serious than her in this world by a long shot. Absolutely millions of them, and they're in political offices all around the world and will do far more harm to more people in a matter of hours than some random social media influencer would do in their lifetime. The people that follow those people will never have their ears open to actual academic discussions because that's just, unfortunately, the limit of their ability to engage with the world. But the second someone becomes reactionary, such as this academic did, who originally misidentified this influencer as Eveline herself and made a whole video about it confidently, which was ridiculous. It was he was so blinded by his own emotional override, he couldn't see he was talking about two different people. The second you do something like that, your academic credibility goes completely out the window. Critiquing what one identifies as potentially harmful rhetoric is valid and a necessary thing to do, but going in with derogatory statements, belittling people, mocking them, completely undermines any academic or moral credibility that one attests to uphold and reduces a learning lesson into a childish social media point scoring system. You can't uphold academic integrity and employ cheap, circumstantial and unfounded evidence to lay severe claims about people's characters publicly, no matter how strong you are in your conviction. It's poor academic practice, and it cheapens the real and valid and necessary sector of the internet dedicated to calling out dangerous BS pseudo-archaeology, because a lot of it, we all know about that. There are some truly unkind, malicious people in this world, and they're going to have social media followers, and they're going to have social media accounts. But there are, technically, some people out there who just regurgitate the messages that they're told around them, and actually, potentially, hearing valid academic opinions and feedback and corrections can possibly breach that wall and give the opportunity for people to question and self-reflect on the potential messages and audience that they have accumulated. This influencer in question, despite their content being stripped of direct right-wing messaging, has accumulated an audience in the comment section which are all very openly anti-Semitic, nationalistic and Islamophobic. Now, I know people aren't responsible for the comments in their videos, but they are responsible for the kinds of people that they attract. Those people in her comments felt confident enough to say that this was a safe space for them to express their type of views in the comment section, and they were all incredibly positive and receptive towards her video. That says something. Now, perhaps that's the audience she aligns with, but perhaps it's not. And if it's not, she needs to seriously self-reflect on how her videos are attracting those kinds of people. What's really funny is that the people that I know who follow her are so far from that ideology, but light years away from it. So it just goes to show you how flawed social media analysis is. It's not an academic medium for that reason. You can't use it as a justifiable metric to come to conclusions. But if you do want to learn about really cool ruins and pagan history and pagan ideas, I'm going to link a load of amazing videos and channels down below for you to check out, because there are some really fantastic ones. And as I say on this channel many times, promote what you love, don't bash what you hate, and your algorithm will be far kinder to you. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider giving it a like, subscribing it, sharing it around. That always really helps my channel. And thank you as always to my patrons for making it possible, particularly my librarians, my wonderful librarians who help run the library. We have Holly is Autistic, Joshua Heredia, Gil the Gilded Dragon, Lady of the Labyrinth, Ellen, Eric Taylor, Yvonne and Yvonne, Jenny Edivane, Marina, Wee Lauren, Nicholas Reed and Andy Brazil. Thank you all so much as always, and I hope you are happy and healthy, and remember, books save lives, so keep reading.